All right. So people have been messaging me and put some stuff on the forums and just getting messages all over the place, basically asking for my take on now that we have preliminary specs for the PS5 and for the Xbox Series X, which I'm just going to call Xbox from now on, because Xbox Series X is a mouthful and it's kind of silly, especially when the Xbox One X. We'll get past all that. So I was actually going to stream this yesterday, but I had a death in the family. No big deal. Nobody needs to say anything. It's the wife of my uncle, and none of us liked her, but we love our uncle, and we're dealing with guardianship and all kinds of stuff with my uncle. So that's why I didn't get this done yesterday. So wanted to talk today about. I've been kind of reading up quite a bit and rewatched the two videos from Digital Foundry, rewatched the presentation from Mark Cerny on the PS5. Just wanted to give kind of my preliminary take on the new consoles and what we know about them so far. And there's a lot of things that we don't know, and there's one key feature of both that we don't know yet. So just kind of first impressions. So I'm just going to go down the list really quick and just talk about the specs of both. If you guys have questions, by the way, please throw them up in the chat, and we can address those. Because I want this to be more of a conversation, since I don't really like when it's just me. So the hardware itself, on the surface, on paper, it's actually pretty similar in most respects, like CPU, GPU, and the fact that they both use SSD. Where things separate quite a bit are, number one, how PlayStation has seemingly kind of developed their own custom hardware to eliminate some of the bottlenecks in these configurations. Because, I mean, both are, again, on paper, kind of off-the-shelf components. They're custom built by AMD, or by ATI, the GPU. But it's based on technology that ATI already has, AMD. I'm going to say ATI or AMD. They're interchangeable in this conversation, because I'm so used to ATI, but AMD owns them now. So first off, you've got AMD Ryzen Zen 2 CPU, which is both. And I actually use a Ryzen chipset in my PC. The Ryzen chipset was kind of AMD's attempt again to compete with like the Core i7, Core i5 Intel chips. And I really like this Ryzen. I have great results with it for computationally, speed-wise, everything. Ryzen was a little rocky at first just because it had its own custom instruction sets that developers needed to use to get the most out of the chipset, but that's not been a problem. Like Modern Warfare runs beautifully on this thing. I run it at 1440, 1440p just because my GPU is a couple of generations old. I've got a 1700, I think, in there. I don't remember. So, but the Ryzen stuff is really good. And, AMD and ATI have had kind of a long history in video game consoles. There was a custom ATI chipset back in the GameCube and the last generations we've seen a lot of NVIDIA, but now both Microsoft and Sony are moving over to AMD/ATI, and it's exciting stuff. They've got some really good tech. So we've got, it looks like 8 cores in the PlayStation 4, 16 core. So there's 8 time Zen 2 cores. Oh yeah, so there's 8 cores in each. The text is a little fuzzy sometimes. 8 cores in each. Xbox, you've got it running up to 3.8 gigahertz per core. And then they've got this SMT, which I forget what it's called now, what that means. But I think it's a custom instruction set that Microsoft is using called SMT. And that drops it down to 3.6 gigahertz per core that the developers can use. I think that's the thing that controls the mesh shaders or something like that. so I don't know if a lot of developers are going to use that or not. You've got up to 3.5 gigahertz for each core on the PlayStation 4, and Sony themselves are actually capping that at 3.5 gigahertz. And Mark Cerny explained that quite a bit, and it makes a lot of sense. It goes down to power usage, but also trying to control the thermal activity in it in very unique ways. And he talked about how on the PS4 and PS3 that, you know, the fan would run quite a bit. Like the fan runs quite a bit on my PS4 Pro with Modern Warfare and with God of War and a lot of the new stuff. So there was an idea behind limiting the core and everything else. Vaken100 says, I saw a Reddit thread where an audio engineer said the offload of the audio processing helps a lot. Yes, it does. And I was going to come to that. So, yes. And, man, that audio stuff was probably the biggest wow moment of the whole presentation. But, I mean, CPU core-wise, you're looking at pretty similar. And the fact that Sony capped it at 3.5 gigahertz per core is a bit deceiving because Sony's kind of doing what they always did, and that is they're kind of spreading the workload out more with some of this custom hardware that they have, like the flash controller, and they have a helper for some of the ray tracing. And when you look at flat out like this many teraflops, and you see that a lot in the Microsoft presentation that they did to like behind closed doors with like Digital Foundry and some other sites. They really focused on the word teraflops a lot more, in my opinion. At least the way things were written up at the sites that I looked at. But what you need to do is look at the whole package, and that's one thing that kind of stood out for me with the PS5 is that they talk about, you know, this custom controller for the SSD and how it handles priorities on its own. It's a custom system for prioritization, and that's huge. They're offloading a lot of the work to other things, as mentioned with the audio processing as well. Whereas the new Xbox, it feels a lot more like it's still more like kind of an off-the-shelf configuration to a certain extent. They're still doing custom stuff themselves as well. But it just felt more off the shelf, which is fine. But when you're dealing with a game console, and I think the PS4 showed this over the Xbox One, you know, they've got some custom hardware in the PS4 as well, and it almost always outperforms the Xbox One. And in cases, the PS4 Pro still outperforms the Xbox One X to a certain extent, or it's on the same level. And there's things that contribute to that, and that's why I think you see this disparity, and you have to be really careful with the messaging because you see this teraflops, that, and it can be very deceiving. For instance, like their memory bandwidth overall on the PS4 or on the PS5, I'm sorry, is 448 gigabytes per second, whereas the memory bandwidth on the Xbox is, see, the numbers they give, it's so deceiving. 6 gigabytes at 336 gigabytes per second, which is a lot less, or 10 gigabytes at 560 gigabytes per second, which is faster than the PS5. But there's other things that get in the way of that. So they're both doing SSD, which is great. Essentially 1 terabyte on each. PS5, the SSD is only going to have 825 gigabytes available, and I think that's because they're reserving some of that for developers to use the a portion of that SSD for like RAM, because that's essentially what it is. It's more memory. It's fast enough that it's the same. It can act as RAM, and that's a big deal. Memory is an expensive thing for any console to have, and being able to offload some of those functions to the SSD is a big deal. And it looks like they're reserving that amount of space, over 100 gigabytes of space, for that function. So now you're going to be able to load in textures faster and whatnot. And the SSD itself, I mean, if anybody that has an SSD in a computer, my PC boots up in like 5 seconds. It's that fast. Where limitations happen is in the tech itself, because this new NVMe standard that both are going to use is much faster. And there really isn't much in terms of NVMe available to the public yet. It's all theoretical. It's all in the works. I don't think anything's available yet. I totally forgot where I was. Oh, the 3D audio. So I'll start over with 3D audio. They call it Tempest, which I thought was kind of cool when you think about Shakespeare. They did a movie adaptation of Tempest years ago, and it made an impression on me, and I thought it was neat because there's this moment where he is the Tempest, and he's up on this cliff, and he's trying to bring on this storm, and it just rang in my head. But if you've ever played anything on PlayStation VR and you've plugged your headphones in to the actual jack on the PlayStation VR headset wire, they're doing positional 3D audio there as well. And it's obviously a simplified version of what's happening here. The PlayStation VR breakout box actually has an audio processor in there, and that's what's handling it all. So we've seen this already from PlayStation. And the other cool thing about it is this points to the fact that we're probably getting a brand new PlayStation 5 VR headset at some point, and it's probably going to be early. When you think about the fact that it's been 4 or 5 years since PSVR has been out, at least. I think the first time I saw PSVR was 6 years ago at GDC. So it's been a while, and I think we're definitely due for an update. Maybe higher quality screen, whatever. But it's cool that the 3D audio is built into the hardware itself, and like mentioned before, that's going to take some of the processing load off of the CPU/GPU and the memory. Being able to shove all that audio off to its own hardware is pretty fantastic stuff. And I like that they want to do 3D audio even through your TV speakers, and it kind of harkens back to the days of Q Sound, when you would play a Capcom arcade game and they had Q Sound for Street Fighter 2, New Challenger, and some of the other games. So it kind of points to that kind of tech. I remember having different breakout boxes for years to do kind of spatial audio with two speakers on the PC. And there's some stuff even today that, you've got your Turtle Beach headphones, you've got your Astro Gaming headphones that have their own software-based algorithms. Well, this is going to be all hardware-based. And they're, it really sounds like they're going after Dolby Atmos. And that's probably what we're going to hear from Xbox is Dolby Atmos. I wouldn't doubt it. The X supports it today. I don't know how strong it is. I don't have an Atmos rig here at the house, but it's really cool that they're doing this 3D audio in the hardware itself. If they can pull all that off, it's going to be neat. I just don't know if I want to take video of my ears and send it to Sony. I'm sure they're going to have a better solution, though. Probably like Mark Cerny said, will they have some kind of an audio test that they'll walk you through and try to figure out what you can hear, what you can't hear. But I'll be honest, one of the things that I love the most is that right away they're giving you an opportunity to expand the SSD storage. Both Microsoft and Sony are. Sony with the NVMe SSD slot right in the system. It's going to be PCI 4.0 based, which there's stuff like that already for PCs. I don't know if they're PCI 4.0 yet, but there are expansion cards that you can get for your PC that just pops in like a sound card, a video card, and it's just a hard drive. It's an SSD hard drive, but it has a lot more throughput than your standard hard drive cables that you have in there, or even USB 3.0 or USB 4.0, whatever. And that's really cool that they're allowing you to do that. What they're worried about, you can tell, and that's why they want to have a certification process for these drives, is to make sure, because there is no spec to say, well, you have an NVMe internal drive, PCIe, it can only be this high, or it can only, there's no spec out there that everyone has to support. So Sony, I think, is acting really smart in terms of saying don't buy them until we certify these drives, so that you don't start blaming Sony because the SSD drive you bought doesn't fit. That's a great idea. What I don't want to see, and I'm sure we will, just like we're seeing on Xbox today, is for Sony to make a deal with like a Seagate or somebody and say, oh, here's an SSD drive for PS5, and they're going to brand it PS5, and it's going to cost $50 more. I don't want to see that, but I'm sure we will. But, that's something that we'll obviously, at PS Nation at least, we'll obviously let y'all know if another drive works, and I'm sure we'll do a video on how to install it, that sort of thing. So I love it. The expandability of the Xbox, though, I'm bothered by it. I'm really bothered by it. I probably shouldn't be, but if you haven't heard, Xbox is doing this thing where they're going to have a proprietary SSD built by, I think, Seagate, and it looks like a PS1 memory card. Looks like that, but it's silver, or it's chrome, and that's 1 terabyte. So each expandable drive right now is 1 terabyte. That's great, awesome space, but it's proprietary. This won't work on your PC. This won't work anywhere else. And the first thing out of my mouth when I was watching the presentation was, wow, that's just like the Vita. And look how happy people were with the Vita and the memory cards for that thing. And I have a feeling that's the only way that you're going to be able to expand or put a second SSD on is using one of those cards. I have a real problem with that. If they can work with Seagate and keep the price down, more power to them. If you're going to be held to 1 terabyte, it won't be bad for a while. But like I said, my PS4 drive is 8 terabytes and it's almost full. Now, of course, I like having the jukebox. I like that. But I think it's a lot more limiting. I think the more that you make parts proprietary like that, the more limiting you are and the more you piss off your customers. And I don't see an easy solution to that after the fact. If after a year they say, ooh, maybe we didn't do this right, what are they going to do? Are they going to do like Connect and create a custom dongle and then you can plug an external SSD in? Okay, but that's going to be limited by speed, potentially, because an external SSD is going to use the USB interface, and that's where the bottleneck's going to be. So, I don't know. That part really bothered me about the Xbox. Am I personally going to have a problem with it? I don't know. I mean, Microsoft made it a big deal to talk about their lower latency connectivity of the controllers, which is fine. But that also tells you that our controllers are probably going to be expensive. I don't know. I don't know. It worries me a little bit that it seems like Microsoft is still going down that path of proprietary this and proprietary that. I'm not saying PlayStation's not. The new DualShock, it's proprietary, even though I can use my DualShock 4 with other things, and I'm sure you'll be able to do that with both of those other devices. I think they already said that you can use the Xbox controller with other stuff. But it's cool that they're doing that. I don't know if the DualShock 4 or DualShock 5, I assume they're going to call it, I don't know if that's going to be a problem, latency. Is that going to be a problem? Has it been a problem on the PS4 with the DualShock 4? I don't think so. I've never had a problem with latency. So it's cool that they're thinking about that. I think they focused a little bit too much on that. The video I saw was kind of scary, and I'm sure it's going to be different, but it was kind of scary because they showed people on the new Xbox in the interface, and it looked just like the interface for the Xbox One, and that's my biggest complaint about that console. I mean, I've said it many times. I've got an Xbox One X, quote unquote, the most powerful console, and it's sluggish, and it's slow, and it's complicated, and it's confusing. And quite frankly, I think that operating system is what holds that system back. I really do. And I think that's going to be the determining factor here, and it's something we're not going to know until a lot closer to launch of both of these consoles, is how is the interface going to look? How speedy is it? How easy is it to navigate around? I mean, I always loved the XMB on PS3, and I always wish they did something very similar to the XMB for the PS4. I like the interface for the PS4, though, and I've definitely learned how to get around in it. Whereas, the Xbox One went through a complete revision after, I don't remember, it was like a year or two. Completely revised how everything worked and looked, but it's still slow as molasses. It's confusing sometimes. You don't know where you have to go to change certain things. You go into the settings and you think, okay, I need to find out why my microphone's not working, for instance, and you can't find it anywhere. Because originally that was built where to the fact that you weren't supposed to have a microphone unless it was Connect. And then they finally abandoned the Connect like everybody else did before the system came out. Yes, that was a burn. Yeah, I agree, Rojas. All the decisions that Microsoft, or a lot of the decisions that Microsoft made with the Xbox One, made it so they didn't propel themselves into first. And I you know, that's where you get with that cross-pollination with Microsoft and how big Microsoft is, though, because they wanted to put the tiles on the Xbox One because they're Windows phones that have now become defunct, and Windows itself and everything else were going to have this tiles display, and it's a shit interface. It really is. You know, when I'm in the store on the console and I hit B or circle or whatever to back out of it, I don't want it to take 2 minutes, and I don't want it to go to some screen that I was on 5 times ago. And that's what happens on the Xbox One to this day. I was just on it yesterday, and it was still that same shitty interface. PS4's not perfect. No, there's still times where it hesitates. If I'm on a really computationally complex game like Modern Warfare, and I want to hold the PlayStation button down to quit out of the game, it takes a few seconds to pop that up on the menu. But it's also late in the late generation in that console's life. You know, it's getting to the point where that hardware is starting to get topped out a little bit. But I really like what they're doing. I mean, both consoles are taking away a lot of the bottlenecks. A lot of those points of failure are going away now, just in 2 different ways. Microsoft seems to be using a lot of the sub-processes on the existing hardware, whereas Sony's offloading a lot of that with doing a separate audio engine and also building these custom chips and putting those in the mix, and those are offloading a lot of the cycles. I personally like PlayStation's approach better because I think that gives them a little bit more overhead to play with if they have to. If something down the road pops up and all of a sudden, holy shit, like the PS3, when people wanted voice chat or they wanted even messaging or an XMB to pop up during a game, we couldn't even do that originally in the PS3. There was no overlay whatsoever, and everybody had in the Xbox 360, and they're like, why can't we do this on the PS3? Well, they implemented it finally, but it would tax that console. And I just like how Sony's approaching this. They really dug in deep. Whereas I think Microsoft is taking the Xbox One X approach with the Series X, and that is just put bigger shit in it. Just put bigger stuff in. That'll be fine. We'll just put bigger stuff. You know? And it just seems more cobbled together, kind of. And it doesn't seem as thought out. And I think it's going to be a powerful console. Don't get me wrong. But I think one thing that Microsoft... It's a strength with the new Xbox, but at the same time, is it? And that is the demo of Gears 5 that they had running on the new console, and they said, it only took us 2 weeks to get this working. Well, sure. But let's break this down. You're an Xbox first party. You're privy to all their tools. You were probably, what's the developer's name for that? The Combabulator or whatever. The folks that developed Gears 5. I'm sure they were in on some of the stuff that they were implementing in the Xbox already. So, sure, Gears 5 took you 2 weeks to get ray tracing working, etc., etc. But you're also working with Unreal Engine, which has a lot of that stuff built into it already. So, they're Coalition, yeah. That was close. But I think it's a great thing that they're going to do a new DirectX, essentially, and they're going to make that available to developers. From what I was reading, and I talked to a couple developers that have been read in on both consoles as well, it seems like things are going to be a little bit more, on paper so far, the feeling was that it's going to be a little bit more streamlined to do things extra on the PS5 than it is on the Xbox Series X, because the PS5, like some of the shader work that they were talking about and some of the texture work they're talking about, there's nothing really more that the developers have to do to utilize that functionality. They just pretty much have to say, we want to do this, check. And the PlayStation 5 does it all for them. Whereas the Xbox One, or the Xbox X, oh, fuck, I'm just going to call it the X. The X, you have to use some of the software calls and everything else, which who knows if that's going to be really difficult or anything else. But it seems like Sony is kind of going back to the original PlayStation and to extending what they did on the PS4 in terms of making things easier for developers to do. And with these processes that they're building into the chips themselves, they're going to offload a lot of that work that is needed to be done to use some of these higher level functions like ray tracing and some of the shader work and you know, streaming textures or whatnot. And that was when you start thinking about it more and more and more, it's pretty impressive. And all you're doing is getting more developers to say, I'd rather do this on PS5. And let's be honest, that's what we want. You know, there's a lot of cross-platform stuff on the current consoles. But even with the X out, the the X has so much more raw power. But to the naked eye, are you really seeing any benefits between the PS4 and the Xbox One X? You know, you can watch Digital Foundry do a side-by-side comparison, and yeah, sometimes you get full 4K instead of checkerboarded 4K on the PS4 Pro. You see these things that, like some of the anti-aliasing that they're doing, or some of the routines that they're using on the Xbox One X. Yeah, it's cool when you can pause it and you can count pixels and you can set it right side by side by the PS4 Pro. It's a moderate upgrade, and quite frankly, when you're playing the game, you're not going to see it. You're not going to notice it. And now you're getting to the point with these new consoles that, you know, there's a certain percentage of these console configurations that are pretty similar. But when you look at the stuff that's not similar, what these companies are doing on their own to customize these configurations, I think Sony's doing it better. I really do. And the funny thing is, John Linneman from Digital Foundry did just a kind of an ad hoc poll on Twitter like last week, and he said, you know, what do you think is going to be better, PS5 or Xbox One Series X? And a lot of people voted for Xbox. I guess that mentality is still happening here in the States, because I don't understand it. I think they're both going to be really good. I think it's going to come down to the operating system, the interface, and what games are available. And, I mean, I think Microsoft took the right step by buying some of these development studios like Ninja Theory and whatnot. Are they going to make good games, though? Are they going to make compelling games? Because, quite frankly, these new consoles, I think we're getting to the point where we're not going to see a lot of hardware or console limitations to hold these games back. You know, we still see that every now and then today. Not as much, but we still see it. Where a game runs really chunky and, you know, it's just not fun to play because it's slow or sluggish or has bugs or whatnot. I think these new ones are going to eliminate a lot of that stuff. Until some smaller developer decides they want to start playing with ray tracing quite a bit and not really understand how to implement it correctly, and then we see a mess. But it's funny. I was fine with PS3. I really was. I liked the PS3. There were a lot of compelling games on it. It took me a while to be truly excited for the PS4 before it came out. I mean, they were showing some really cool stuff. I was excited, but I wasn't like clawing at it. But I'm excited for PS5. And again, I'm totally fine with how the PS4 is right now. PS4 Pro? I mean, Modern Warfare runs great. For example, I have it on PC, and I have a pretty decent PC. And I don't see the difference between the two, honestly. And I'm not running it at 4K on PC because I want a better frame rate. And I don't think my card can do 4K, but I don't know if I can do it with all the effects turned on and everything without it chunking out my frame rate. But I think that game looks absolutely fantastic. And even on the Xbox One X, I played Warzone the other day because it's free. And to me, it looks just like the PS4 Pro version. And I haven't seen a comparison, but like, oh, you only get this resolution at this. And all right. I mean, I've said it time and time again. A full 4K resolution, it's not that big of a deal for me. Stoffinator says, Microsoft focuses on Game Pass. Quick games, they want a game on Pass every month. Yes, true. Are we going to see Sony do the same thing? Are we going to see them react to how well Game Pass is doing and take PlayStation Now further, or are they just not going to worry about PlayStation Now and kind of retool it to be more like Game Pass? Or are they... I mean, Microsoft is reacting as well with their Project Stream or whatever, X Stream or whatever it is. You know, maybe Sony is on the right track with Now and they just need to actually do something with it. My God, the PS3 lineup and especially the PS2 lineup on Now right now is terrible. Right now. So I don't know. I think Sony's been on the right path since PS4. Have they been perfect? Obviously not. But they've really done a lot of good things, and I think we've seen the outcome of that. They've consistently beaten the Xbox One down with PS4, even the regular PS4, the amateur. Sony tried to Microsoft tried to get a jump on them with the X, but quite frankly, I think the X is kind of a failure. I use it the most because it's got the most power, and hopefully I can squeeze something out of it. But I think it's a failure, in my opinion. If the X would have been the only console they released at the time, and they could figure out this software, maybe it'd be better. I think stuff runs fine on it, but the experience getting to the game and actually getting into it and playing it is a real nightmare sometimes. Back to PlayStation Now. Sony said they want less games but bigger focus games. Well, they haven't done that yet. They really haven't. I think there's some key stuff on PlayStation Now that's missing, and I don't think they'll ever fix. You know, I've mentioned MotorStorm and MotorStorm Pacific Rift. I've mentioned Resistance, at least the first Resistance. 2, maybe not as much, because of all the online components of that game. But there's a lot of stuff that's missing on PlayStation Now for the older consoles that I think is needed. I think it's essential stuff that they're missing, and I don't know. Like I said, it seems to me on PS3 that if the game wasn't originally available digitally on the PS3, it's not going to be on PlayStation Now. And the 2 examples I just gave, I think, are perfect proof of that, because none of those are available digitally on the PS3. And that bums me out, because I have to go through all my PS3 games and try to find the first Resistance, because I actually kind of want to play through it again. And I would love to do that on the PS4. I mean, this is a personal thing, but I would love to do that on PS4, because then I can use my custom controller and I can actually do the left triggers on the DualShock 4 on PlayStation Now, but I can't. So, anyway. Just some other notes that I've seen mentioned in some places. First off, one of the notes I saw on the Xbox One, or on the X itself, they're saying the transistor density of the RDNA 2 compute unit is 62% higher than a PS4 compute unit, meaning that in terms of transistor count at least... Oh, this is PS5. PlayStation 5's array of 36 compute units is equivalent to 58 PlayStation 4 compute units. Remember, on top of that, those new CUs are running at well over twice the frequency. So just to give you an idea of the scale of the difference in power, it's a very, very big difference. And they're actually doing kind of like they did with the PlayStation 3, where they were, every cell processor they were putting out, they would deactivate one of the SPUs. They're kind of doing the same thing here, so that they can guarantee higher yields out of these chips that they're putting out. And it seemed to work before. It's no big deal. Everybody, let's unlock that, even though that wouldn't do anything. And then I'll go back to what I was talking about with Gears 5 and a quote from one of the developers at Coalition. Gears 5 will be optimized, so the work that you've seen today on the demo that we saw on YouTube will be there, available at launch on Series X. The title will support smart delivery, so if you already have the title in whatever form, you'll be able to get it on the Series X for free. Now that's cool, and that's something we were thinking about was going to happen because of how they've been doing the backward compatibility on the Xbox One back to the original Xbox and the 360. So it's cool to see that. And, I think that's what we're going to see on PS5 as well. I really do. If what I thought was true is true, and you can just take your PS4 hard drive and plug it into the PS5, that's awesome. Will I do that? I'll do that initially, but if it works well enough, I'll probably end up buying another hard drive for the PS5 and filling that whole thing up. Well, maybe I won't. Because if the backward compatibility is good enough in PS5, because remember you heard Mark Cerny talk about that they're testing every game right now, and some of them aren't going to work at launch. I think it really depends on what works and what doesn't. But is there going to be a time where I still want to use the PS4 for a lot of stuff, and I need to have that and the PS5 connected at the same time? Or is the backward compatibility going to be good enough that I can realistically unplug that 8 terabyte hard drive, plug it into the PS5, and box my PS4 up, and that's it? That'd be pretty cool. That would actually be pretty cool if I can do that. So, I think that's it for now. I think the biggest game changer between the two in my mind is how they're handling the extra SSDs. I'm really focused on that, and I probably shouldn't be, but I am. The fact that Xbox is using a proprietary 1 terabyte SSD that looks like a little memory card compared, and they're saying, then you can load everything on there and you can take that card with you. I'm not doing that. I didn't take my memory cards from the PS1 and PS2 with me to my friend's house or whatever. Why would I do that now? You want me to go behind the console that I have on my TV stand with all this other stuff and try to wriggle my way through to find out where that little card is and take it with me? In theory, yeah, it's cool, but in reality, I don't want to do that. Does anybody want to do that? Seriously? I don't know. But I love the fact that Sony is thinking ahead with this NVMe configuration. Yeah, there's going to be some caveats early on, I think, just because it's a newer technology in terms of getting one that's certified by Sony and that it'll work. I'm really curious if they're going to have some sort of mechanism where they have a database that downloads to each PS5, and if you get an NVMe drive that may work, it may fit and everything else, and you plug it in but it's not certified by Sony, is the console going to recognize that and say, whoa, we didn't certify this drive, take that piece of shit out of there, take that virus out of me? What do I think the prices will be? It's a damn good question. I don't think they can do anything over 500, realistically. I just don't. Sony needs to ride the popularity of the PS4 and what they've done with the PS4. They're going to be similarly priced, and it's going to be like the E3 years ago where they're all going to they're going to watch each other. And once one reveals a price, the other one's going to pounce and say, we're doing it $5 cheaper. Or something like that, Game prices, I think, are going to stay the same, $60 for full games. I do like that the PS5 is finally going to come with a 4K drive. I just don't know if that's going to be too late. Something else is going to emerge by then, and Sony can be a step behind on that front. I don't know. Price-wise, I actually thought, and maybe they haven't revealed it, I don't think. I actually think that Sony's going to make their own SSD drives for the ones that are in the PS4. They've got the PS5. They've got the capabilities. They've got the manufacturing, and they can do all that. I think that's going to be one of the factors, is how much they have to spend on parts and whatever. I don't think it's over 500. I really don't. Do you think they will make it this year? If so, short supply. I think they'll make it this year. I think they're already in production, probably. I think some of the parts are probably in production already. Yeah, I think that every rumor I've heard is that both are going to launch by the end of the year, holiday 2020. I mean, there was that Amazon leak the other day where they were showing the X coming out of Thanksgiving. But that got quickly scrubbed, so you don't know. And I think that's more posturing than anything else. I think holiday 2020 is... I think that's even what Sony said. Didn't they say holiday 2020? I did talk on backward compatibility. I think it's finally the right move. It sounds like PlayStation's doing kind of what Xbox is doing today, where you'll have to download a file and make it backward compatible, which is fine. That actually gives us more chance for good compatibility, I think. But also, it means that they're not putting a PS4 core in the PS5 or anything else. I'm a little surprised they're not doing something in the OS itself, just because, they're both x86 architectures at this point. You would think that they'd be able to do some kind of compatibility, but the SSD and the memory bandwidth and everything else on the PS5 just might be too fast for PS4 software. So they have to build these wrappers for the PS4 games to make them run correctly. I like it, and quite frankly, I'm very happy about it. I really do wish that, or hope that they can do BC for PS3, PS2, and PS1 games as well. I think all are feasible. PS3 is the toughest, of course, because this is the cell processor and everything, but with all the cores on these new CPUs, you would think something would be possible. Of course, I'm just talking up my ass, but if Sony makes their own memory cards, hopefully they won't put a Sony price tag on it. I don't see why Sony would make their own memory cards, because they don't do memory cards. And you've got the cloud storage now. Hopefully, Sony's learned from Xbox and updates that software so that your profile syncs automatically. That would be amazing. But if you're talking about SSDs, I think if Sony makes their own, it'll only be the one that's in the PS5 itself. I'm not talking about expansion stuff. I'm talking about the one inside the system itself. PS5 has 3 backward compatible modes: PS4, PS4 Pro, and PS5 Boost. Yeah, he mentioned that. If Sony makes their memory, let's see here. They said that a lot of the games will play, yes, but they're certifying every one of them, which tells me they're building a wrapper, kind of like they were doing for a while for PS2 to PS4 games. They certified every one of them, and I think that's the process that they're using for PS4 to PS5, from what it sounds like. I know the guy that's involved with that program and runs that program, and he's said a couple very basic things to me. He's not spilling the beans. And boost mode's great. I mean, I love boost mode on the PS4 Pro, even though I don't think anything's really had to use it for a long time. But Battlefield 4 on boost mode on the PS4 Pro is awesome. It's great. I don't think we're going to have to see a lot of that on PS4 to PS5. I think what we might see is, because the PS4 Pro exists today and it does the checkerboard scaling up to possibly 4K, that you might see a boost in that respect where they do a full 4K display of the PS4 games. I could see that. I mean, all the PS4s already support HDR, so obviously that's going to be there. And I think they're on a good path for PS4 to PS5 in terms of compatibility and effects and features that they can take advantage of, because they're already doing that in PS4 Pro with some older stuff. So, yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see what games we're going to get. I mean, we know a couple of them, but I'm excited to see what we're going to get, and especially first-party wise. Are they going to do maybe a new Motorstorm to kick off PS5? Oh, would that be amazing? Are we going to see a new Resistance? Are we going to see a new Killzone? Yeah, right. Are we going to see a new Horizon Zero Dawn? Or are we just going to see an expansion with the PS4 version and they program in PS5 if features or whatever into it? What are we going to see? What's new from Naughty Dog besides Last of Us 2? Is Ghost of Tsushima going to be a PS5 and a PS4 game? Like I've been hearing? Is Gran Turismo Sport PS5 going to be a launch title? As I was hearing for a long time. There's some cool shit. But when you think about the Xbox, obviously Gears 5 is going to be available right away with X features. Are we going to see a lot of launch titles on the new X from all these developers that they've snatched up? Obviously, the one from Ninja Theory, which I forget, it's the Sinuous Sacrifice follow-up. I think we'll see that at launch. But how many more games from these studios that they snatched up are we going to see produce launch titles? Are we going to see a Telltale game, or not Telltale? I had it on the tip of my tongue for a while. Tim Schafer's company. Are we going to see something from them right away? Halo Infinite. All right. Yeah, I would love to see a new Infamous. I was actually thinking about playing the new Infamous or the newest Infamous on PS4 again, and I finished it, but I never finished. Oh no, I finished the add-on for that too. So yeah, maybe I'll play that again. I don't know. Halo. I've been trying to play Halo a lot lately, and except for the last couple of weeks, but I've been trying to play it, the different versions, because I think Halo 5's terrible. I think it's so boring, and the mechanics are just awful. And I know it's popular. I'm not saying it's not a good game. It's not a good game for me, but I just don't get it. I don't understand the popularity nowadays. I get why it was popular on the first Xbox, because it was a console FPS. And if you didn't come from PC like I did, it was a big deal, I guess, even though I played it on PC and I thought it was a really bad game. Thanks, Moobot. Yeah, Halo 5 just... I've tried. I think I'm 45% through the campaign, something like that. Last I looked. It just isn't doing it. I'm forcing myself to move on, and I finally just gave up. Because it's so inaccurate how you shoot. It's spray and pray. That's all it is. I don't know. I'm not impressed. Anyway. Rumor was Gran Turismo 7 for launch. Yeah, I've been hearing that for a long time. The Sport was going to be a launch title. They built the engine so that it'll scale to the PS5. Yeah. And if so, my God, I hope my steering wheels work. I hope my racing wheels work and I don't have to get a new one. I mean, luckily we don't have custom controller ports anymore, like on the PS1 and PS2 especially, and PS3. We have USB and Bluetooth and that stuff. So hopefully the shit just works. And my God, I hope they put enough USB ports on the PS5. Please put more USB ports on it. But yeah, I'm excited. My jaw really dropped, and it was funny seeing all the comments about Mark Cerny. How dry the presentation was. Well, number one, that's Mark Cerny. That's how he is. Number two, that presentation was meant for GDC, for a bunch of developers. It wasn't supposed to be entertaining. I really got a lot out of it. I'm used to presentations like that, though. So for me, I was just engrossed in what he was saying, and the 3D audio thing really threw me for a loop. That they're actually focusing some of their time and effort on audio production instead of just leaning on DTS or Dolby Digital, whatever, Atmos or whatnot. That they're actually leaning on that and trying to go their own way with it is damned impressive. So I love it. Yeah, I love listening to Cerny talk as well. Every time I've met him, we always get into some kind of conversation, and it takes a while. You have to kind of feed his ego a little bit to get him talking, and then he'll just go, and then you kind of blank out because he's talking way over your head. But very cool guy, very intelligent guy, and I'm glad they have him on the team. But honestly, all of this is nothing but good for gamers, except for the fact that you have to buy a new console. But the PS4, I think, has done a pretty damn good job over the last few years. I've been very happy with the PS4 since launch, really. And it's only gotten better, and they've listened to gamers, especially when they wanted external hard drives. It's a different Sony. And, Cerny and that team are the ones that developed the PS4, and the fact that those people are developing the PS5. Look, the one little simple thing, the share button, look how much that changed the landscape of gaming on consoles. All right. Stream crashed again. Sorry about that. Thank Elgato and thank Streamlabs OBS, because Slob still doesn't work and Elgato software just likes to crash. Even though I'm using all Elgato hardware here. I'm using the old Camlink. Anyway. So, unless anyone has any other questions, so I'm going to upload this as a podcast episode, just because I think people are interested in this stuff, and hopefully this will generate some conversation. We'll definitely have a thread going on our forums for this, and also up on the Facebook page if you want. But let's discuss this. Let's, maybe bring up some questions, and if I don't know the answers, or if I don't have an opinion about it, I can ask around and try to get answers for it. I think the design will be close to the PS4. That's a damn good question. I don't know, because I was actually messing around with my original PS3 today, my 60 gig. And there's a lot of, the styles are kind of similar between the PS3 and PS4, but there's enough differences that you know exactly when you're looking at whatever console. All I hope is it's not like a tower like this Series X. That console design, I don't like it very much right now. I don't know. I'd have to see it sit. Man, it's freaking huge. The Xbox One X is already a big console, but my God, that thing looks like it's double the size. So I don't know. I always hate speculating about the new console design. I tell the story about at E3. It's when Josh didn't go to E3 that year, and I was hanging around with Chris Cuspis from PSN Stores at the time. And we were going to the Microsoft press conference, and Scott Rohde and I were texting back and forth, and he says, well, can I just catch a ride with you instead of getting an Uber or whatever? I'm like, yeah, I'll come pick you up. So we went and picked him up, and the ride over to the USC campus isn't that long, because he was staying in the hotel right by the Staples Center, so it's like a 10-minute ride maybe, depending on traffic. And the whole ride over, all he's doing is, wait till you see the new design of the PS4. Wait till you see the design. I'm like, what does it look like? Give me one hint. He wouldn't say anything. So all day, through the Microsoft press conference, I think there was another press conference before the Sony one even, I'm just like, now he's got my brain turning about, and he started teasing me and saying how cool it looked, and it does. I really like the PS4 design. I always have. I think it looks great on my TV stand, and I just really like it. RIP PSN Stores, yeah. Yeah, because, it's funny, Chris works for Microsoft now. Not for Xbox, but for Microsoft. And Eric, I think he's developing his own game right now. I don't know if he works for anyone else. I haven't talked to either one lately. Chris had a kid, so Chris and his wife had a kid. But yeah, I'm interested to see what the design's going to be, because I've always really liked the PlayStation designs. All the way up through PS1 to PS4, the Vita, the PSP. I've always liked their designs. I've never said, ugh, that's ugly. I've never had a problem with their console designs. So I'm interested, and I'm excited for this year. If they do some kind of a preview event, I really hope I get invited. I don't think I will. But I really would love to be invited to that, because I think it'd be a blast. But But I'm excited, and this year's going to be a lot of speculation and a lot of craziness and a lot of not knowing anything and still trying to figure things out. And it's going to be like when the PS4 was going to be revealed and when the Xbox was going to be revealed. We'll see if either one of them does a swing and a miss like the Xbox One. In my opinion, the Xbox One has not been a great console cycle. It really hasn't. There's some good games on there, but I really about once a month I make it a point to get on the Xbox One X and play some stuff. I just make it a point to do it because I pay a lot of money for that console. But yeah, it would be nice to have two really cool consoles with good, solid exclusives on each. Because there's a certain point, and I've said this about the Xbox One for a while. What's the point of having it? Because their exclusives overall kind of sucked. I mean, Forza Horizon 3 is pretty good. I haven't really gotten into it much, but it's pretty good. The latest Forza is okay. I still really don't like a lot of things about it, especially the fact that it doesn't play well with the racing wheel at all. Yeah, TV functionality, which I never tried. No Kinect. I had a Kinect for like a day. Will PS5 come with earbuds? I wouldn't put it past them. If they still have an earphone jack on the controller, I wouldn't put it past them. Because quite frankly, for a long time, you can almost guarantee that people are going to be on voice chat until their cat ate the earbud, their dog tore up the earbud, they lost their earbud because they were using it with their cell phone. There were all these excuses, but at the end of the day, I still yell at people. Who was I just yelling at? There was somebody I was giving shit to the other day because we were playing and he's like, "Oh, I don't have a headset." I think it was Snake when I was playing Division 2 with him. I don't have a headset. What are you talking about? To this day, every PlayStation 4 comes with that earbud. And that microphone's actually not bad. I use it sometimes when I'm playing online with you guys, and I don't think you realize that I'm using it. Can play them on PC. No need for PC guys to buy an Xbox like in the past. Yeah. Well, there's so much Xbox stuff on PC now, yeah, that not everything works the same. Like all the Xbox games I have, not all of them are available on PC, but you can tell they're going down that road. I'm still kind of stunned that they're doing a new Xbox. Because for a long time it was very evident that they wanted Xbox to be a platform. And with the beta of that X streaming or whatever that they're doing, I thought that was pointing to no more Xbox console. So I'm actually shocked they're doing a new console. And I think I'm almost wondering if it's pride at this point, that they don't want to go out like a bitch with the Xbox One, that they want to have a successful console and then say we're going to get rid of the hardware, we're just going to go as a platform on PCs and streaming and etc. I fully believe that's in the cards for the future. I really do. Because quite frankly, one thing that I've never been too stoked about is Microsoft doing any hardware. It's not their strong point. I don't know. Well, they want Xbox to stream, but I mean, if you get the streaming service today from them in the beta, they send you a clip for your phone. They want you to do it on your phone and on your tablet and on your PC. I don't think they're really even focused on Xbox. I mean, it works, but I don't think they're focused on it. They want you to do what they're doing with Stadia for the most part, except actually have a library. Oh, Steam. They want Xbox to be Steam? Yeah. Microsoft, see, that's Microsoft's MO, and I don't think a lot of gamers understand that. I've been in IT for 21, 23 years. Microsoft's MO is to get into everyone else's space. Oracle was doing really well, and they were very prevalent in the database market. So guess what? Microsoft started pushing SQL like crazy, making great deals for companies to undercut Oracle. giving you better support for a few years. And then things would dry up. They were kind of the Google of before Google was the thing. Microsoft's not really got a great track record with hardware. They don't. I'm not talking about just game consoles. I'm talking about hardware in general. Microsoft doesn't have that great of a track record. So, but them trying to compete with Steam, yeah, I see it. Already I see it. They have the Microsoft Store, the Xbox Store on PC. It's same thing, even though it runs like shit. I had so many problems installing. It's not even a game. There's a Microsoft Store to get like apps and everything for Windows. And I needed the control panel for NVIDIA. And you get that from the store. You don't get it from NVIDIA themselves. It took me 2 hours to get that to work. It just did not want to work because it was a rights issue. It wouldn't install. Finally, I kind of had to brute force it and get it to install. So, as usual. And I say that, and again, I'm not saying that as a gamer. I'm saying as somebody that's had to deal with Microsoft for over 20 years in IT. And they just want to get into a space. They want to crush that opponent so they can start working into that space. So they'll crush somebody with some weird tactics. And then if they crush them and get them out of the market or they get more market share, then they'll put the time and the development and the money into becoming good at that space. It's really weird. Yeah, xCloud. I should bug somebody and get into that. I would bug somebody and get into that beta, but at the same time, I don't think I'd ever play it. I barely ever play Stadia. I barely ever play PlayStation Now. So, anyway. Well, if nobody has any other questions, I think I'll bag this and maybe I'll put this out as a podcast this week. So it'll be episode, 651? But, yeah, like I said, I've been getting questions from a lot of people, like, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on that? I figured I'd do it this way. I was going to do it earlier, but I had to deal with some family business that held me back a couple days. So, family business. But, anyway, I guess I'm done. Thanks much for watching, folks. I'll put this video up. I've actually been recording it on the camera as well, so it should be uninterrupted. And, yeah. So hopefully y'all had a good time. If anything else comes up, hit me up on the forums, hit me up on Twitter at PSNation or at TorgoPSN. Shoot me an email, glenn@psnation.com, Glenn with 2 N's. Hit me up on PSN if you want, even though it's a little bit more difficult for me to respond on PSN, obviously. Or something on the Facebook page, facebook.com/PSNation page. But let's keep this conversation going. We got some fun times for gaming this year, folks. We have some really fun times ahead. Should be cool. All right. Well, I guess that's it. Nobody else is talking. So, get out there, play some games, have a great one. Thanks for joining me. Stay safe. Don't get the corona. And don't be stupid and go to a beach for spring break and get corona with everybody else. Like a moron. Don't do it. Just don't do it. All right, thanks. Thanks, Moobot. Don't forget, if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to this channel for free with your Prime subscription. Good job, Moobot. Good job.